This is a show about authentic, deep connection to the liminal spaces. Join me and my guests as we explore the boundaries between the expected and the unexplained, between the living and the dead, between heaven and earth, between everyday life and the initiation into the unseen realms. Welcome to Mysteries, Graveyards, and the Human Psyche. I'm your host, Melissa B. Episode 1, The Haunted Hotel. When I was a little girl, I used to see ghosts in my bedroom at night. I would be awakened in the wee small hours and there would be faces in my room. They would float right up to me and disrespect the personal space that all of us are used to. And it was frightening. For this reason, I didn't want to go to bed. I used to stall, and I would make a oval of protective stuffed animals around me, try to stop this from happening. At some point, I stopped seeing these ghosts, and ever since then, I've been curious about that time. I've always been a palm reader and a tarot reader. I've always had moments in readings where I knew information that I really couldn't have known. And I've been curious about that. And so I started working with a spiritual teacher. And I've had some progress, but nothing major until this past August when I went to stay in a hotel. I chose the place because it was a town that I would visit when I was a young girl, and in a sense of nostalgia and wanting to re-experience the place as a grown-up, I booked a hotel I'd never stayed in before because of its proximity to the beach. And my husband and I checked in for a few days. When I got there, I wanted to get to the beach immediately, and my husband was doing things in the room, and I wanted to get going so impatiently. I said, "I'll wait for you in the hallway." And no sooner did I get out in the hallway, I hadn't even fully closed the door behind me yet when I was struck with the presence of a ghost a little bit in front of me and to the right. Couldn't see anything, but I could feel the presence. It was a dense energy, as if a human being was standing right there. It was almost like I had walked out into the hallway and knocked into somebody. "Oh, excuse me." And as soon as I realized that it was there, I could sense that it fled. It ran down the hallway to my right and was gone. I was really surprised by this, and so surprised by it that I almost couldn't even take it in. There's something about these experiences that in the telling afterwards, you realize that your mind is wiped clean, like when we used to wash the chalkboard for our teacher when I was a little girl. Just the sense of all of the thoughts that you had, or all of these chalk marks on the blackboard. And this experience takes a wet sponge and erases everything that you were thinking about, everything that you were feeling. It's so singular that I didn't even say anything about it to my husband. We just went down to the beach. And I didn't really think of it actively, but it was in the back of my mind. And then later that night, after having a really fun day, we were back in the room and we retired for the night. And I was awakened in the middle of the night with the sense that I had already been having a conversation with someone. And as I came to my awakened consciousness, I realized that this was a young man that I was speaking with. And he showed me in my mind's eye an image of his face and explained to me that this is what I saw when I died. I saw my face looking like this, and it wasn't pretty. I won't really go into detail about it because there's no point of talking about something that's possibly traumatic for people. But he said I didn't believe that I had died when I saw my face like this. And that was the reason why I couldn't accept the fact that I had died. And then he was gone. That's all he wanted to tell me. He wanted to share this with me. You know, I think of the things that I've heard before from people who do this kind of thing regularly. And I said, well, if you're still there, we can try to help you go into the light. And I started to imagine light and to see if I could grow this sense of light within me. And I never heard from this young man again. And then a few minutes later, there was another presence in the room, and it was standing near the closet to the left side of the bed, to the foot of the bed. And I could sense that it was a little girl, a little blonde girl. And she was the presence that I felt in the beginning when I first went into the hallway, and was just curious about me, didn't say anything, and just moved on. I had a hard time going back to sleep. I don't think I slept at all. Just waited until there was light in the sky, and I got dressed and made sure I had my hotel card with me, and I went down to the beach and looked at the sunrise, and there was a dog playing in the surf and a few people sitting on the sand, and it was beautiful, and it chased the chill away from me, the physical chill of the hotel room and the feeling of chilliness from being near presences that are stuck. And I realized that the dead are just as stubborn and lost as the living are. And I also realized at that time as well that a big realization that can be gleaned from a situation like this is that we, the living, have a choice. We can choose to look for the sunrise. I didn't say anything about this to my husband. And it's not that my husband is a disbeliever, but he just doesn't have the same desire that I do to experience the unseen realms, hence the podcast that I'm creating. But we had a fun day, and then later that night we were at the hotel bar, and I could tell that this one bartender who was being treated rather rottenly by some of the patrons there. I could just tell that she was the type of person who would be willing to talk about ghosts. I said, "Do you know anything about the history of this place? May I ask you about that?" And she said, "Oh yes, this hotel is the oldest building on the island. In the 1850s, there was a terrible maritime disaster. The people of this town gathered on the shore, but there was nothing that they could do to help these people. They went out to retrieve them, and they brought their bodies here and stacked them right over there." And she gestured to her left. And she said, "There have been sightings in this hotel. They've seen a little girl and her mother. They've seen the man who built the original hotel. It was interesting to have that confirmation. And it was interesting to find myself in a place that was haunted, because I realized that it's not usual for us to Google, is this hotel haunted? And I realized that unless it's the draw of the place, that a hotel is not going to tell you if there's paranormal activity, the way that they're not going to tell you if they've got mold or if the carpets haven't been cleaned since the 90s. I wanted to share this story because experiencing something like paranormal activity is not the way it looks in the movies, is not the way it looks on TV. I'm a skeptic, like everyone else, but I'm also trying to grow my intuitive power, which I believe is a gift of all human beings. For me to go to the hotel and to have an experience like this, my eyes were really opened. What is time like to a ghost? And as the world continues to move on, let's not do that in our lives while we have the chance to be differently and think differently and break out of patterns of thought that maybe aren't even our own. Maybe we just inherited that from our community or our family or our schooling. Let's break out of those old ways of thinking, especially if they don't make us fulfill in our lives and they hold us back and keep us in the past. The present is a present because it's a gift. And that's what I wanted to say for this first episode of this podcast. Coming up, we will have a discussion about the importance of preserving gravestones. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast, and I hope to be with you again.